Hey, how's it going everyone? It is Drago. We're back with another fairy tale video, and we're talking about what if Lucy never joined fairy tale, / kind of showing her importance in the story. So just to make things simpler, I'm going to base this off of like the first episode still happened, but instead of Lucy joining fairy tale, Natsu and Lucy just go their separate ways. I think like saving Makao, that would have still been the same. Natsu was going to go do that anyway. Because Lucy didn't join Fairy Tail, Natsu and Lucy would have never done the mission against Everloo, and they would have never got the key to Virgo. And because they didn't get the key to Virgo when they do the Eisenwald arc, it would just be Urza, Natsu, and Gray, and they would have no way to escape the train station because they used Virgo's key to escape. You would have had Lullaby be summoned, and Eisenwald probably would have won. I also think the team between Natsu, Gray, and Urza just wouldn't last because those three, pretty much at the beginning of the series, they never really liked each other, and Lucy was the one that kind of made them all become friends. So it wouldn't shock me if that team dissolved very, very fast. I honestly think Galuna would probably still happen because Natsu was just gearing to try and do a S-Class quest anyway, and I mean Lucy just kind of helped nudge it that way, but like I think Natsu would have tried to do it regardless. I mean, if he does go do the S-Class quest, I think it would have still gone off without a hitch. You would still had Gray chase after him, and then Urza. Where you start getting quite a few differences now is when you get into Phantom Lord. Phantom Lord would have never actually attacked Fairy Tail because the only reason they attacked Fairy Tail was because Lucy was part of the guild. So honestly, if she never joined, Phantom Lord would just go exclusively after Lucy and not even bother going after any guilds. And she wouldn't have anyone to back her up either, which I think would very much result in Lucy obviously being taken back to her father and probably being forced to marry whoever her father had planned. And she would have never potentially had the wizard life she wanted and the, friends and guild mates. Honestly, Lucy not joining is pretty depressing for her that she just basically got forced into a marriage. With the Phantom Lord arc basically not happening at all for Fairy Tail, and the original guild hall would have never been destroyed, and you get into the Loki arc and Loki would have 100% died because Lucy was the one to save him, and you would have never gotten the resort tickets that, started off the Tower of Heaven arc. Obviously Urza would have still been kidnapped by Jalal and everyone else in the Tower of Heaven. I think you would still have people trying to go rescue her, but I think it would be a very much different team than who went to go rescue her in the actual Tower of Heaven, because the main players you wouldn't have joining this arc, you wouldn't have Lucy and you wouldn't have Juvia, because Juvia and Gagiel would theoretically still be in Phantom Lord. It wouldn't shock me that Gray and Natsu still join in on the Tower of Heaven, but who else would join them? Who knows? I still kind of feel like they would be able to do the Tower of Heaven arc regardless still. Lucy and Juvia were able to defeat one of the members of Trinity Raven, but, depending on who joins in on this arc, they could potentially defeat that third member as well. The next arc being the Battle of Fairy Tail. I still think that arc would happen, but not potentially when it did. The reason why it was more pushed to the forefront was because of the disaster that was Phantom Lord, and Loxus just got so pissed off with that, he's like, let's do the Battle of Fairy Tail. I still think it would happen because in his heart he was still thinking it and he was still wanting to do it to overthrow the guild and kind of have this mutiny, but I think it would maybe happen potentially down the line. If anything, I think it would maybe happen after the Oracion Seis arc because of what happens then. Loxus would probably have a pretty good shot because, Lucy was a pretty key figure in that arc because she defeated Bixlow, and Bixlow's power is pretty broken, and she had Loki to do it. You really only had Natsu, Urza, and Gajiel fighting, which Gajiel wouldn't be part of this and Lucy wouldn't be part of this. Yeah, I think they would have a lot of problems if a Battle of Fairy Tail happened without, those 3 members. And the reason why I kind of feel like the Battle of Fairy Tail would have potentially maybe happened after the Seis arc, I think you still would have had the Alliance to go try and take down the Seis. I do not think they would have won, because for one, the finale of the arc, they're destroying all the Nirvana crystals. Lucy was a member that destroyed one of the crystals, and at that point they had no one on the battlefield. There was only these 6, and that was it. I think that they would have not been able to destroy Nirvana. And also they wouldn't have defeated all the Seis either, because Lucy defeated Angel. And I think Angel could have been defeated by someone else, because I think honestly out of all the members of the Seis, she probably was the weakest. Also, a thing I didn't even mention yet, but Lucy not joining Fairy Tail, she would have not gotten the Sagittarius key, and particularly from this arc, she would have not got Uranometrium, and she would have not gotten the keys that she got, also Loki. I think there's a pretty high chance that they would have failed in the Oracion Seis arc, and this also would probably segue into Wendy not joining Fairy Tail, or maybe she does. I still think that the Kate Shelter Guild would have dissolved. It was more Urza and Natsu, if anything, making her join Fairy Tail, so it's kind of iffy on if she does or doesn't. I think this is potentially how you could have had a Battle of Fairy Tail happen after this, just because, Bloxus could have been pissed off that you failed this, mission to defeat the Oracion Seis. Edolas is kind of interesting in the aspect of the final battle had Natsu, Wendy, and Gajiel all fighting together. You could potentially have Wendy be in the guild, but Gajiel for sure is not in the guild. Lucy during this arc helped rally the Edolas Fairy Tail and also defeated, was his name Bora? Yeah, I know he turned into the giant octopus dude, but I can't imagine him being too hard to defeat. Now I think it would have been a lot harder to do the final battle against the King of Edolas. The 3 Dragon Slayers had a hard enough time defeating him by themselves, particularly not having Gajiel, because Wendy's more of a support, but Gajiel definitely helped out in that fight for more offensive purposes. So I think they would have had a harder time defeating the King of Edolas. I still think they probably could do it, because they're fighting this magic tool against Dragon Slayers. Going on to Tenrou Island. First off, Kana would never have had a partner for the trial. So Kana probably would have left the guild, and she would have never confessed to Guildarts that, he's her dad. And you also would have never had Juvia be a participant for the S-Class trial. And also Levi would have never had Gajiel as a partner, so who knows who she would have picked. And Gray would have also had to pick a different partner, because Loki at this point would be dead. And Mest debatable on if he has Wendy or not, depending on who fills the slots for the missing members of the S-Class trial. Could make this arc go in many a different ways. I still think Fairy Tail could have pulled it out, depending on who they fill in those slots with for the S-Class trial and fighting Grimoire Heart. They would have had a little bit of a tougher battle against, the Grimoire Heart members, because you're missing some heavy hitters. In the final battle against Hades, you're missing Lucy, obviously, and potentially Wendy, maybe. And who knows if they even have the greatest teamwork, because I imagine that Natsu, Gray, and Urza still probably haven't been that much of a team, so who knows how well they work together. And if they potentially win, they would still have Acnologia show up. They have to do the Fairy Sphere spell. 7-year gap happens. When you get to the Grand Magic Games, I don't think they would have had much of a chance there. Fairy Tail Team A had, Lucy on it, and she wouldn't be there. Potentially Wendy, but would they have been able to even do the Sky Labyrinth to even get into it? Because, Lucy was a pretty helpful member on trying to figure out where to go in that. And does Team Natsu even exist at this point? I don't think so. And then Fairy Tail Team B, I don't think that they would have even been in the games at all, because you had Gajiel and Juvia part of that team. I don't even think that anyone would have potentially got into the games. So I think this would have resulted in Sabretooth winning pretty much without contest, and you would have definitely not had the battle between Sting Rogue and Gajiel and Natsu. And who knows if they are able to do the eclipse, because the only reason why they were really able to do it is because, Yukino left, she helped them out, and they would have been severely screwed over because they would have opened the eclipse gate and Lucy and Yukino just so happened to be there, which they would not have the full Zodiac in the slightest, and I don't think they would have ever been able to close the eclipse gate door. Now, if you had someone get lucky and push a dragon into it, like Natsu did, then you could have maybe potentially destroyed it. But that would have been a pretty severe problem that they called in so many dragons and they had no way to close it. And even if they somehow survived the Grand Magic Games and the thousands of dragons that were caused because of the Eclipse Gate, I think the next arc would have for sure killed Fairy Tail. The Sun Village probably wouldn't have happened, because if Fairy Tail isn't part of the games, Warren would have never saw the games and he would have never requested Gray and Natsu. Now, I do think it is a very real possibility that he still could have, just because he was a former member of Fairy Tail, and it wouldn't shock me if he checks in on the former members of his guild. It wouldn't shock me if he knew what Natsu and Gray's powers were. Sun Village probably would have happened still mostly the same. I don't see anything too crazy happening to not have it go their way. You definitely wouldn't have probably had Minerva be part of a dark guild and her joining Tartaros later. And Tartaros is the arc that I'm not even going to bother to go past, because everyone would have been dead after Tartaros. There's no question about it, they would have literally all been dead. Because Lucy single-handedly saved everyone during that arc. For one, they would have had a significantly harder time defeating anyone in that arc. They had Gajiel and Juvia helping out, and, those were some pretty strong members of Tartaros that they defeated. But the second that Allegria spell got cast, they would all be dead. And Lucy was just lucky enough to be saved. And even if they somehow managed to survive that, they would still have to deal with Face, and I don't think they're going to deal with any of that. So I think the whole Fairy Tail Guild would have been wiped out after Tartaros, and there's not even a reason to go any further with any of the other arcs, just because they're all dead. That's it. Meanwhile, Lucy's living the bummer life of having a forced marriage. There is no extra keys or power-ups. She didn't get Star Dress. Now, I still think she probably would have not been happy with her life and tried to run away and do other things. But I think this really shows her importance in the guild. Like, you literally wouldn't have some of the most fan-favorite members of the guild if she never joined. You wouldn't have some of the relationships like Gajiel and Levi, Gray and Juvia. You would have some important characters be just straight up dead, aka Loki, and eventually the whole guild would literally have died if it wasn't for Lucy. She is so integral to the story, and I think people just underestimate how important she truly is. There's a bunch of little things you could also have, because like Lucy, talking with people, getting them to do things, there's a bunch of little things that you could add to this list. But I think these are some of the most major things that Lucy contributed to the guild, and with her never joining the guild, it would have caused a lot of catastrophic things to happen. So leave your guys' thoughts about Lucy in the comments below. Thank you for watching. This is Drago, signing out.